Hello and welcome to Recharge Wrestling. We're here to plug you into the world of professional wrestling. I'm Fisher and I'm here with my weekly show, TopMarks and SkidMarks. This is episode 4, so go back and watch previous shows if you're not familiar with the format. I basically talk about some of my favourite segments from the week, from televised wrestling, and my least favourites. Normally try to give a lot more positive ones than negative ones because that's, I enjoy watching it. I don't watch it to criticise it. I watch it to have fun. But I do like to have a critical angle on some stuff, as we like to on here on Recharge Wrestling. Hopefully, next week we'll have more content for you. With Money in the Bank coming up, we'll be at SmackDown and Money in the Bank live. So hopefully we'll have some preview, predictions, live coverage from there. So keep an eye on our channel, on our Twitter as well, at Recharge Wrestle for more information. Give us a follow there if you haven't already. Like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, because we should have a lot more content coming. I know I've been saying that for a few weeks, but with Money in the Bank next week, that's almost a certainty. Because, Keeney and Krusty have been quite busy. They haven't really had a chance to post videos on the channel recently, so I've been kind of doing them on my own. But I've enjoyed this new show and this new format, which I want to keep going, but we want to do other stuff as well, of course, and we will get back to that. Just want to say that before I get started. So same format. I give most of my top marks first, then I'll talk about my skid marks of the week, and then end the video with a positive note again and have my very top mark of the week, my favourite thing from TV this week. And I cover SmackDown, Raw, NXT, Dynamite, and now Collision as well, because that started, of course, last Saturday. Let's start with Collision then, actually, and talk about top marks. I loved the feel of the show, the different look to it. The ropes were red, the theme tune, the way the commentary team, McGuinness and Kevin Kelly, the different wrestlers on there that we haven't seen in a while, Miro, Andrade, and of course the big one, CM Punk. It felt more like the old AEW. It felt more... I don't know. I liked the feel of it. It felt fresh. It felt different. Hopefully it continues on that. It was a very solid show overall. I just want to talk about the overall show really being a top mark. And the fact that, Rampage kind of died a long time ago. It's still on, but I haven't watched it in ages. I don't really care about it. I don't think anyone does. And then to now have two shows, you can pretty much do a brand split. You might have people crossing over, but, you've got enough wrestlers to cover both brands if you want to keep some people separate, which seems like the plan, and still keep strong interest in television. So really happy with Collision as a whole, the presentation of it. And like I say, CM Punk's promo. I said last week, CM Punk will always be a top mark or a skid mark. He's never going to be quiet and in between. There were parts of his promo that I didn't particularly like and I thought were a bit unnecessary, but there were parts of his promo that were clever, good, and he had the palm eating, crowd eating out of the palm of his hand. The telling thing will be when they're not in Chicago. So after this week, really, will the crowd react to him? Because in Chicago, he's always going to be treated like a god. They're on his side. The Elite were getting booed on Dynamite and stuff. That's going to happen in Chicago, which is why I don't think they had the Elite out in front of the crowd really too much. So yeah, but yeah, that was generally from that. Let's talk about NXT. Bron Breakker and Seth Rollins. I mentioned last week that it was cool that Rollins was going to appear on NXT. We weren't sure if it was going to happen after the angle they did on Raw, but he did turn up, sold his injury, but had his match with Bron Breakker, and they had a really good TV main event, and it really boosted the NXT ratings, which at one point was at nearly 1 million, which hasn't happened in a very long time for NXT during that segment, and I think overall ratings were pretty high. So it got people tuning into NXT, and I thought the general show, they did some other good stuff on there as well, including Tyler Bate versus Wesley, which I want to give a little bit of a shout out, but it's not actually on my list. But Breakker and Rollins put on a really good match. It was a good showcase for Breakker, who I think is going to be on the main roster very soon. Was on Raw as well. Did appear on Raw to hype the match up, which I thought they did a good job of on Raw to hype the match. They were questioning whether it was going to happen after the Balor beatdown. And then after the match, they had Balor show up as well. They had Carmelo make the save. There's got potential there for a tag team feud maybe of some sort. But yeah, overall, really good stuff and good use of main roster talent on NXT. That there was one, I praise a lot the use of main roster talent on NXT. There was one I'm not happy with at the moment, but that's rare. So yeah, on to Raw. Raw had, I've got 3 things actually that I've got on my list here from Raw, which is really strong. So first of all, the return of Tommaso Ciampa. Very, very happy to see him back. It's been missed, and I like the use of him here. Instead of coming back, answering the open challenge, which I thought could have been done, and then they changed it. He comes out, answers the Miz's open challenge, beats the Miz, has a good match. You know, the crowd are into it. Has his old theme song back, crucially, as well. No One Will Survive, which is great. I think the crowd loves that. Comes out, and then afterwards on Raw Talk cuts a great promo hinting at a DIY reunion, which I do want to see. So, all in all, very good stuff from the Ciampa return. The second thing was LA Knight. Yeah. Normally critical if SmackDown people show up on Raw because of the brand split, but I get it when you're trying to build a Money in the Bank match because it is a match that crosses both brands. And, I mean, he gets more and more over each week, and here the crowd were lapping it up, doing his LA Knight and then the yeah. And during his promo, I got The Rock vibes here. And I've heard people compare his sort of style and his catchphrases before. But here, talking about where he can shove his prime bottles and all that, and talk about him, you know, he's the real megastar. He's caters to 14-year-old girls on YouTube. Really good stuff from LA Knight, and he really roasted Logan Paul. Logan Paul himself in the Money in the Bank ladder match, I think that's a positive thing as long as he doesn't win it. So for anyone wondering what our thoughts are on that, for me personally, I'm excited that he's in the match. I think it's cool that he's there. We'll get to see him. He'll do a good spot. You know he's going to deliver something big, but I don't think he should win the match. If he does win the match, that might end up being a skid mark. But we'll see later down the line. And then the third thing from Raw was just a solid 6-man tag main event. You had 6 of your top Raw stars on there. The Judgment Day taking on Cody, KO and Sammy, and the crowd really helped this as well. They weren't the loudest crowd throughout the night in general, but for the matches. But here they got really into it, and it was a really fun 6-man tag team match to close the show, which I really enjoyed. On to Dynamite. A couple of things I like. The booking of the TBS title. I was critical of it during Jade Cargill's run because even though she was going on a tear, she wasn't beating people of note a lot, and she was wrestling on Rampage most of the time, and it just felt like it was just there, especially towards the end. And since Chris Statlander won the title, they've been featuring matches on Dynamite. They've been giving it some time, and I feel like they're getting there with the TBS title, making it feel important again. So I just want to give that a mention because I thought that was good. And the segment between MJF and Adam Cole. MJF is usually, you'll notice, a top mark of mine when I talk about AEW. Him and Adam Cole were gold here, finding out they were going to be teammates, having to go at Shivani, like looking at each other, and then Cole at the end saying, good luck, partner, because obviously MJF will be defending his AEW title against Hiroshi Tanahashi, isn't it? Forbidden Door. So a match with no build, which I will get to later on this. But yeah, the promo itself, excellent work. And that leads me on to then to my skid marks. I might as well carry on from that and start with the one I've got from Dynamite. I've got one from each show actually, apart from Collision. I've got one from AEW, one from NXT, one from SmackDown, one from Raw. So the thing with AEW is nitpicking really, because there wasn't anything too much, but I did feel like they've done a very good job in general this year with building Forbidden Door. Last year, if you were watching the shows during last year, we were very critical of AEW during the Forbidden Door build. It kind of turned some of us off of it. We weren't really watching it much. We weren't enjoying it as much. This year, I think they've done a much better job of the build, bringing in people. Obviously, they brought out a Okada here. That was good. They've had Will Ospreay on the show. They've had Zack Sabre Jr. on the show, etc. But they have randomly thrown some matches out, and I'm sure there'll probably be more to come, just to fill out the card a little bit. CM Punk just like, oh yeah, have a match. You know, the matches will be good, but I would rather have them kept this pay-per-view shorter. I know they like doing 12, 13 matches on the pay-per-view. A lot of people got on the card, but I was quite excited for this show when it was 7 or 8 matches. But now it looks like it's going to be more, and they're just throwing random ones on there that are going to be skippable, in my opinion, just for the sake of it. And it's a small downside, but I'm sure it will be good. And maybe I'll do a video on Forbidden Door next week. On to SmackDown, and normally I'm a big fan of the Gauntlet match. I think they're a good job of getting a lot of people involved in matches and wrestling on the shows. And they can be good time filler, particularly on Raw, where it's a 3-hour show. You can spend 45 minutes having a tag team gauntlet or a one-on-one gauntlet, but they quite often do it with the tag teams. Have a few solid matches in there, maybe one squash match to thing, and then it really builds up a team that wins, or sometimes in defeat, a team goes through, like it did here with the Brawling Brutes, go through loads of people but don't end up winning it. Here, this felt very rushed, and I think obviously the 2-hour format of SmackDown doesn't suit gauntlet matches. I will say that. So normally they're better when they're on Raw for that reason, because you can take more time. You've got an extra hour to play with for the other segments on the show. This SmackDown was stacked up, and they booked a gauntlet match. It didn't really make much sense in that way, other than to get people on the show. And in particular, the booking of Street Profits in their lose first quite quickly against a fresh team. I thought that was very strange booking for a team that a lot of people like, and Triple H has even called Montez Ford a star. They've been, booked fairly well over their WWE run, but recently I feel like they've become a bit irrelevant again, and that's a shame. Obviously, Hit Row got jobbed out, which I think is fine. That's the one of those ways you can do that, but the whole thing felt rushed and predictable as well. Once the Brawling Brutes got that first team, it was the Street Profits. You kind of knew they were just going to go all the way to the end, and Pretty Deadly were going to beat them, because Pretty Deadly versus Brawling Brutes has been the feud. They went all the way through, and then they beat them, and that's exactly what happened. Just have a sip of tea, sorry. To celebrate the Pretty Deadly tag team match at SmackDown next week. Have a nice cup of tea for the British boys there. I'm glad Pretty Deadly won, and it's cool to see them in person, but it was kind of predictable and very rushed. On to Raw. And last week I mentioned that weird booking with Ronda and Raquel Rodriguez. And this week Raquel was involved again in some dodgy women's booking, where they had a DQ in a Money in the Bank qualifier, which isn't the best way to do it. I get they don't want to have Raquel losing too much, but why book the match against Trish? Find another way to get Trish in there. Don't bother booking it. Just do what Logan Paul did if you're going to do anything. Trish has got that power, pulling power. She can be like, I'm a legend, I've got myself in the match. I wouldn't have liked that, but I preferred it to them doing a qualifier and then just having Becky accidentally DQ Raquel. Raquel now isn't in the match. Will she be added? Who knows? But yeah, weird booking there. Didn't like it. And they're getting a bit lazy with the women's booking at the moment, particularly regarding the Money in the Bank qualifiers and stuff. So yeah, and the tag team division. So not overly keen on that. And then the last one was from NXT, and I mentioned earlier, main rosters, people coming down to NXT, and the booking of Dana Brooke. Not just the booking, the crowd reaction to it. People are normally very excited when main roster stars come down to NXT. Dana Brooke, I feel like, hasn't been given a chance here. Then she's got this injury thing, and yeah, I just, maybe it's been a mistake to send her down. I mean, I heard it was on Twitter yesterday, Mickey James very critical of NXT having Dana Brooke in the first place. I thought it was a mistake to do that. I don't know if I agree with that in a sense, because it's still a use of her, but it hasn't worked, and the crowd treatment of her was a bit weird. Bit of a skid mark on that one, unfortunately. And then we save my top mark of the week then. It could only be one this week, and we the ones, because the Bloodline are back. Last week was the first week on this show where I didn't top mark or anything the Bloodline. Obviously, we've never been a skid mark. But yeah, I kind of mentioned them briefly, but it was alright. But that was the first week since I've been doing the show, and I wasn't it was great. Then last week they went and topped it, didn't they? It's probably the best one so far since I've been doing the show. Jey Uso finally turning on Roman Reigns, and the way it was done, brilliant. Teasing it throughout the night, what will happen. Jey briefly speaking to Sally, Roman cutting his promo, Jimmy comes down, And then it's who's Jay going to side with? And they teased and teased and teased that it was going to be with Roman. And then the way he delivers the line and just says, you're out, and then I'm out too, and turns around and super kicks Roman Reigns, double super kick to Roman Reigns. And I just can't wait to see what happens next. Obviously, we're getting a massive tag team match at Money in the Bank, which I can't wait to see. Roman and Solo versus the Usos. I mean, can't ask for much better than that. I kind of think Roman should be defending his title in a way. I thought we might see Roman versus Jay or Jimmy 1-on-1 maybe for the title, and then we'd get the tag match somewhere else or before it. But I'm not going to complain because it's still a big time match and story driven match that I'm really looking forward to see. And that was the only thing that was ever going to be. As soon as it happened, I said to the guys, that's top mark for the week sorted. Nothing's beating that. Superbly done segment. Best storyline in wrestling for quite some time, isn't it? And yeah, it's picked back up again to a brilliant level. And the bloodline looks like it's done. So yeah, very interesting. And that's it really from me this week, guys. So like I say, hopefully next week, keep an eye on our channel. Should have Money in the Bank content come in, predictions, previews, and hopefully some videos from the show itself. And then maybe a review or something afterwards of SmackDown or Money in the Bank that we're going to be at live. Follow us on Twitter at @BCharlesWrestle. Also get involved. Look up for our predictions because Predictions League. If you're in it, if you're not in it, follow us on at @BCharlesWrestle on Twitter, and you can get involved predicting WWE matches. We only do WWE main roster shows, so you can predict along with us there. Winner at the end of the year gets a WWE t-shirt of their choosing, and it can't be one of us. If we win, then it's whoever comes second will get it, kind of thing. So yeah, there's that to look forward to as well, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.